Right now, there is a $9 billion business model counting on you staying entirely in the dark about what I am going to reveal today. Every single spring, roughly 8 out of 10 American households head to their local garden center to grab plastic bottles filled with chemicals to douse their backyard veggies. We have been trapped in this routine for decades. The bugs arrive, we spray them, they return, and we spray them again. And the corporations manufacturing those bottles rake in another $3 billion just in the US alone. But if you travel just a few hundred miles west of Manhattan, out into the beautiful farmlands of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, you will find a population of roughly 44,000 people who have successfully grown incredible food for over 300 years without ever buying a single bottle of chemical pesticide. Not a drop. And their crops do not just scrape by, they flourish. Their tomato vines are lush. Their squash leaves are pristine. The insect damage they deal with is just a tiny fraction of what the rest of us tolerate. A few years back, I was standing in one of these gardens, looking at rows of pepper plants without a solitary aphid in sight, and I asked myself, what exactly have these folks mastered that the rest of us are still paying good money to avoid understanding? Today, I am going to decode precisely what Amish gardeners are doing differently, step by step, so you can apply these exact methods in your own raised beds or backyard plots this season. Make sure you stick around until the very end, because the final method I am going to reveal requires nothing more than an empty toilet paper tube. Honestly, it is the one trick that made me feel incredibly dense for not figuring it out 30 years ago. Before we dive into the steps, we need a little context, because this is about much more than just pulling weeds and planting seeds. This is the story of an entire system engineered to keep you hooked, and a community that quietly decided to walk away from it centuries ago. The modern chemical pesticide market actually began commercially back in the 1940s, right after the Second World War. Chemical manufacturers desperately needed fresh buyers for the synthetic compounds they had created for the military. Suddenly, things like DDT, chlorinated hydrocarbons, and organophosphates were shifted from the battlefield to the cornfield almost overnight. And here is the detail that should make you stop and think. The underlying business strategy was never to permanently cure your garden's bug problems. It was just to control the issue barely enough to ensure you return next spring to purchase another bottle. That is not a wild conspiracy theory. That is just basic economics. If a product permanently solved the problem, it would be a terrible business model. So, for the last 80 years, a massive portion of the gardening world has been stuck on a treadmill of spraying. You briefly suppress the pests, watch them multiply again, and reach for the bottle. Meanwhile, the Amish have been standing in their fields watching this whole circus and shaking their heads. They already understood a fundamental truth that modern agricultural scientists are only just now proving with peer-reviewed studies. You do not defeat garden pests by killing them. You defeat pests by cultivating a garden where they simply cannot survive. That one psychological pivot is infinitely more valuable than the entire pesticide aisle at your local hardware store. Let me break down exactly how this functions, starting with the detail that blew my mind the most. The story that completely changed my perspective involves a guy named John Kemp. If that name does not ring a bell, it will soon, because his findings represent one of the greatest leaps forward in modern farming. It all started with an Amish teenager who only went to school up to the 8th grade. Kemp was raised on a modest fruit and vegetable farm over in Northeast Ohio. His dad was actually the local distributor for agricultural chemicals. They were the family who tested every brand new synthetic spray first and then recommended it to the surrounding farms. Because of this, they sprayed their fields heavier than almost anyone else in the region. Even so, between the years 2002 and 2004, they suffered catastrophic losses, losing up to 70% of their 4 main crops for 3 consecutive seasons, even though they threw every chemical imaginable at the problem. Their crops were getting devoured by insects and ravaged by disease, and no liquid in a jug could halt the destruction. Then, an accidental experiment changed the trajectory of everything. In 2004, Kemp's family leased a field right next door from a dairy farmer. This particular piece of land had never seen a drop of pesticide. It had only ever been used for a basic 4-year rotation of corn, small grains, and hay. The family decided to plant cantaloupes across the entire property, spanning both the heavily treated soil they owned and the untreated dairy soil, with the rows crossing directly over the property boundary. They used the exact same seeds, planted on the exact same afternoon, with the exact same fertilizer and fungicide regimen. When harvest time rolled around on the Kemp family's side of the line, the dirt that had been bombarded with chemicals for over a decade, 80% of the plant foliage was smothered in powdery mildew. But on the dairy farmer's untouched soil, the infection rate was 0. Not a 5% infection, not 10%, 0. You could literally draw a knife line right down the center of the field, where the two distinct soils touched. Two absolutely identical plants sitting just 2 feet apart, one totally ruined and the other vibrantly healthy. Kemp desperately needed to understand why this happened. This is where the story takes a phenomenal turn. This 18-year-old Amish young man, who had never gone past the 8th grade, who grew up without a television, without the internet, and without a telephone, marched into the local public library and started reading. He did not grab gardening magazines. He went straight for university-level textbooks. For 2 solid years, he consumed dense academic texts on biology, plant physiology, chemistry, and agronomy. He even used interlibrary loans to get his hands on rare, obscure research papers from France and Germany. What he ultimately pieced together was absolutely staggering. Plants possess an immune system. It is not a figure of speech. It is a genuine, multi-layered defense network very similar to what we have. And Kemp learned that this defense mechanism works in distinct stages. At the most foundational level, when a plant absorbs the correct balance of mineral nutrition, specifically things like zinc, copper, manganese, iron, and the right type of nitrogen, along with adequate magnesium, it reaches a state of complete photosynthesis. When a plant achieves this, it converts all of its soluble nitrates into complete proteins. This next fact is going to fundamentally alter how you view every creeping insect in your yard. Larval bugs, meaning your hornworms, loopers, and caterpillars, as well as sucking insects like whiteflies, thrips, and aphids, all feed on soluble nitrates. They literally lack the biological ability to digest complete proteins. Their digestive tracts are just too primitive. So, when a plant is robust enough to process all of its nitrogen into complete proteins, those hungry insects land on the leaf, attempt to take a bite, realize there is absolutely no usable food there, and buzz off. The plant did not kill them. It did not aggressively repel them. It simply eliminated their dietary source on a cellular level. The pest starves while standing on an absolute banquet of food. Think about that concept for a moment, because it completely rewrites the conventional wisdom of bug control. That aphid lands on your tomato, tries to suck out some sap, finds nothing it can process, and flies away completely hungry. You did not have to set a trap. You did not have to spray a mist. You did not have to intervene at all. The plant protected itself simply by being far too healthy to be considered a meal. And the crazy part is, this massive shift in resistance can activate in as little as 24 to 48 hours once those vital minerals are made available. In just 2 days, a plant can transform from being a pest magnet into a pest-proof fortress. This is not some old wives' tale. This is not wishful thinking. In 2006, Kemp launched a company called Advancing Eco-Agriculture. Fast forward to 2024, and his firm is guiding the management of over 4 million acres of farmland across North America. Prestigious universities like Penn State, Cornell, and various European institutions have produced peer-reviewed papers confirming that biologically thriving, mineral-balanced soils yield plants with much thicker cell walls, higher concentrations of defensive chemicals, and vastly superior immunity to bugs. A paper published in Frontiers in Plant Science proved that balanced nutrition is the very first shield a plant has, with soil minerals directly modulating immune enzymes and turning on systemic resistance pathways. Modern science is finally catching up to what the Amish figured out through 3 centuries of simply paying attention. The soil is not merely a place for the plant to live. The soil is the literal immune system of the plant. So, here is the first practical step you can take, and it forms the bedrock that everything else is built upon. Every spring, before you even think about putting a single seedling into the dirt, lay down 2 to 3 inches of well-aged compost over your garden beds and gently work it into the top 4 to 6 inches of the soil. If you can source compost that contains aged cow or horse manure, that is even better. That mix of decomposed plant material and animal waste fosters a spectacularly diverse soil microbiome. Amish farmers are not buying bags of chemical fertilizer. They build their soil using cover crops, compost, and manure, and they have been successfully farming the exact same plots of earth for generations. The secret here is consistency. One single application is not going to magically cure your garden, but if you spend 2 or 3 seasons cultivating your soil biology this way, you will witness something incredible. Your vegetable plants will develop thicker stems, turn a much deeper green, and they will recover from minor insect damage exponentially faster than they ever did before. I started adopting this practice 4 years ago, and the transformation in my pepper and tomato plants alone made every heavy wheelbarrow of compost entirely worth the effort. If you live in a colder climate, say growing zones 3 through 5, try to get your compost spread as soon as the soil thaws enough to work it, which is ideally 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost. Down in the warmer zones, 7 through 9, you can get started in late winter. But here is the critical concept that most gardeners overlook, and it is exactly why I had to share John Kemp's story with you first. Soil health and pest control are not 2 separate categories. They are the exact same conversation. Poor soil produces weak plants, and weak plants are essentially a glowing neon diner sign for every single pest in your neighborhood. Now, this next strategy is where the Amish method completely diverges from what you see in a standard suburban backyard. Frankly, it is the detail that made me feel incredibly foolish for not grasping it years ago. Most American gardens feature pristine single-crop rows. You have all your tomatoes over here, a neat row of beans right there, and your squash way over on the opposite side. It looks clean and highly organized. It makes picking your vegetables very convenient. But to a hungry insect, a massive, unbroken row of a single crop is an open freeway with no speed limit and giant billboards pointing to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Amish gardeners do the exact opposite. They intentionally scramble everything up. They intermingle aromatic flowers and herbs directly alongside their vegetables. And the logic behind this is brilliantly simple. The vast majority of garden pests locate their favorite plants through scent. Tomato hornworms, cabbage moths, aphids, cucumber beetles, they all steer by tracking the specific chemical odors that their host plants emit into the breeze. When you tuck strong-smelling companion plants all around your vegetables, you generate a phenomenon that entomologists call olfactory confusion. The insects literally cannot track down your tomatoes because the scent of marigolds, dill, and basil is completely jamming their radar. It is like trying to hear a friend whisper your name while standing in the middle of a screaming concert crowd. Here is exactly how to replicate this. For every 3 or 4 tomato plants you grow, snuggle 1 basil plant in about 8 to 10 inches from the base. Basil acts as a natural repellent for whiteflies, aphids, and tomato hornworms. As an added perk, many folks swear it actually enhances the flavor of the tomatoes. The Amish have been pairing these two together for absolute generations. Next, in between your rows of kale, broccoli, or cabbage, drop in some cilantro or dill every 12 to 14 inches. These specific herbs push away imported cabbage worms and cabbage moths. But here is where it gets incredibly clever, the double benefit. When that cilantro and dill eventually bloom, those tiny flowers pull in hoverflies and parasitic wasps. These are absolutely ruthless predators that hunt caterpillars and aphids. So, you are actively pushing away the bad bugs while simultaneously drafting their natural predators to guard your garden. That is not just basic gardening. That is advanced biological warfare using flowers. Around the perimeter of your garden beds, plant French marigolds. Avoid the massive pom-pom African varieties. Stick to the compact French types. Space them about 10 to 12 inches apart. Below the ground, their roots emit a chemical compound called alpha-terthional that knocks back root knot nematodes, while above ground, their pungent smell drives off squash bugs and whiteflies. Numerous agricultural science programs have verified this through rigorous, controlled studies. This is not just old folklore passed down for tradition's sake. It is scientific pest management refined by hundreds of years of daily practice. Furthermore, the Amish grasp a fundamental truth about insects that took me decades to finally learn, and it totally inverted my entire gardening philosophy. A truly healthy garden is not a space devoid of bugs. A healthy garden is a space filled with the correct bugs. Consider this. A lone ladybug can devour up to 50 aphids in a single afternoon. One tiny lacewing larva can crush 200 aphids during its brief lifespan. Parasitic wasps inject their eggs right inside cabbage worms and hornworms, destroying them from the inside out. Ground beetles roam the surface of your soil all night long, hunting down grubs, cutworms, and slugs while you are fast asleep. These insects are not just slightly beneficial, they are your personal, unpaid, 24/7 security force. And Amish families design their plots specifically to keep this security team fully employed. The easiest method to achieve this is by planting an insectary strip. Just designate a tiny sliver of your garden, maybe a 2-foot wide row along the edge, and pack it tightly with the flowers and herbs these helpful bugs rely on for pollen and nectar. Put sweet alyssum right at the front edge, since it grows low, and blossoms all summer long. Behind that, stagger some yarrow and dill about 10 to 12 inches apart. If you have the space, throw some fennel in the back. The goal here is a continuous succession of blooms from early spring straight through autumn, ensuring your beneficials always have a compelling reason to stick around. Within a couple of weeks of those first buds opening, that strip is going to be swarming with parasitic wasps, lacewings, hoverflies, and ladybugs. Once those colonies settle in, they act as a patrol force for your whole garden. Amish families also deliberately leave specific patches of their land completely wild. A clump of clover near the vegetable beds, an unmowed border near the fence line, a small heap of rocks where ground beetles can hide. This is not laziness. This is essential habitat. Every good bug needs a place to shelter, reproduce, and survive the winter. If your backyard is meticulously manicured, with exposed, bare dirt between every single row, you have basically hung up a giant no vacancy sign for the exact creatures you want working for you. Let me share a massive mistake I made early on so you can avoid it. During my first year trying this, I purchased a live bag of ladybugs, set them loose at dusk, and by the very next morning, they had all vanished. Every last one. You have to give them a habitat before you invite them over. Build the environment first. If you live up in zones 4 through 6, where beneficial populations wake up a bit slower in the spring, buying eggs for lacewings or ladybugs can definitely jumpstart the process, but only if that flowering habitat is already established. If not, you just bought an expensive lunch for your neighbor's yard. This next habit is the one that feels the most antiquated, and that is exactly why it outperforms anything you can pick up in a spray bottle. Every single Amish gardener I have chatted with in Lancaster County treats their morning garden walk like it is as fundamental as eating breakfast. It is incredibly straightforward. It is not flashy at all. But it could easily be the most potent pest management strategy you ever adopt. Every single morning, you stroll through your garden for 15 to 20 minutes. You carry a little bucket filled halfway with water and a tiny squirt of basic dish soap. You begin at one side and systematically weave your way through every single bed. You are not just looking at the pretty colors, you are actively flipping over leaves, inspecting the undersides of your squash plants, and scanning the stems. And the moment you spot a bad bug, you pluck it off with your fingers and toss it right into that soapy bucket. I realize this sounds almost laughably basic, but let me explain why it is so critical. Major, catastrophic pest infestations rarely occur because of just one or two rogue insects. They happen because a tiny, manageable population was permitted to reproduce without any interference. A single tomato hornworm can strip a whole branch bare in 48 hours. Two squash bugs can deposit hundreds of eggs over a single weekend. By the time the damage is glaringly obvious and you are sprinting to grab the spray, you are already 3 steps behind. The Amish morning stroll catches the issues when they are merely minor hiccups, long before they escalate into full-blown disasters. Catching 2 hornworms on a Monday means you have 0 hornworms on Monday afternoon, rather than dealing with 20 hornworms by Friday. On your tomato plants, scan the uppermost leaves and the stems for hornworms. They blend in incredibly well, so look for their little dark droppings on the foliage below to give away their location. For your cucumbers and squash, flip the massive leaves over and search for tiny bronze-colored clusters of eggs. Those belong to squash bugs. Scraping those off with your thumbnail today will save you a massive headache 2 weeks down the road. For your brassicas, keep an eye out for little green caterpillars and those white butterflies fluttering around depositing their eggs. I can promise you, after doing this for 2 years, it becomes pure second nature. It provides 15 minutes of peaceful quiet before the chaos of the day begins, and it connects you to the actual living reality of your garden in a way that no chemical spray ever could. You start to develop a keen eye for what looks healthy and what looks wrong. You learn the daily rhythms, and you intercept problems early, which truly is 90% of the fight. Now, this upcoming strategy is probably my personal favorite because the logic behind it is just so brilliantly sneaky it makes you grin. Rather than fighting to block every single bug from entering the garden, Amish growers actually roll out the welcome mat for them, but then hand them the wrong directions. This concept is known as trap cropping. You essentially plant something that the insects find far more delicious than your prized vegetables, and you situate it right on the perimeter to lure them away from the food you actually intend to eat. Nasturtiums are the textbook example here. Aphids absolutely obsess over nasturtiums, way more than they care about your pepper plants or green beans. So you plant a border of them around the outside of your beds or at the tips of your rows, spaced maybe 6 to 8 inches apart. The aphids will swarm the nasturtiums and pretty much ignore your primary harvest. Once those flowers are totally covered in aphids, you are faced with 2 options. You can yank the flowers out of the dirt and throw them away. Or, even better, just leave them be and let the lacewings and ladybugs from your habitat strip move in for a massive feast. You just built a fully self-sustaining loop. The decoy plant pulls in the bad bugs. Your beneficial bugs hunt them down, and your actual food grows perfectly safe in the center. Take a moment to really think about that. You did not wage a war. You did not purchase a chemical. You did not spray a single drop. You simply organized living plants in a specific layout, and the bug issue completely resolved itself. That transcends basic gardening. You are literally engineering a functioning ecosystem. If you battle flea beetles, which absolutely terrorize eggplants and baby brassicas, try sowing a line of radishes about 2 feet away from your main crops to act as a decoy. Flea beetles vastly prefer the taste of radish greens and will flock straight to them. You give up the radish leaves, and your eggplants remain flawless. Blue Hubbard squash serves as another incredible decoy. If you are cultivating pumpkins or any summer squash, tucking a few Blue Hubbard seeds into the far edges of your yard will pull cucumber beetles and squash vine borers away from your main harvest like a powerful magnet. Your goal is not to harvest the Blue Hubbard. It is strictly a sacrificial lamb. The magic of trap cropping is that it demands 0 chemicals, no expensive products, and no extra daily work aside from your usual morning stroll. You sow the seeds once. The bugs act exactly how nature programmed them to act. They just do it in a spot that you do not care about. By the way, if you are getting something out of this and want more deep dives exploring how older cultures manage their land, make sure to subscribe. I have plenty more content just like this on the way. But let's press on, because we are approaching the technique that shifted my entire perspective. For those moments when the bugs are swarming thicker than normal, or you face a targeted issue demanding immediate action, Amish growers turn to simple, homemade repellent sprays crafted right from basic kitchen ingredients. Let me give you the exact recipe an Amish family in Lancaster County shared with me. It is my absolute go-to because it is highly effective and takes barely 10 minutes to mix up. Grab 4 or 5 garlic cloves and a couple of hot peppers. Cayenne is great, but whatever spicy pepper you have on hand is fine. Roughly chop them up. Toss them into a quart of warm water and just let the whole thing steep overnight for a minimum of 12 hours. When morning rolls around, strain the liquid through some cheesecloth straight into a spray bottle and stir in a single teaspoon of basic liquid dish soap. Avoid harsh detergents. Just use standard dish soap. That soap is crucial because it helps the liquid cling to the foliage and it actually degrades the protective waxy outer layer on soft insects like aphids. You mist this solution directly onto the struggling plants, paying special attention to the undersides of the leaves where bugs love to hide out. Always apply this early in the day or right around dusk. Do not ever spray it under the blazing midday sun, as the soapy mixture can scorch the leaves in high heat. A single coating generally repels bugs for about a week. Just remember to spray it again if you get a heavy rainstorm. I need to be completely honest here, though. This mixture is not going to instantly fry pests on contact the way a lab-created chemical would. It simply repels them. It turns your plants into a terrible-tasting, foul-smelling meal. Consequently, the bugs relocate to find a more appetizing target. When you layer this with the soil building, the companion planting, the beneficial bug habitats, and your morning walks, it is almost always more than sufficient. This spray is merely one component of a larger system, not a magic bullet. That right there is the core distinction between the Amish mindset and the marketing pitch from the chemical companies. The corporations want you to believe a single jug will fix everything. The Amish understand that real success requires a holistic system. Let me outline a few common habits I used to swear by, which this Amish philosophy completely flips upside down. And honestly, no judgment at all if you do these things, because I did them myself for far too many years. Habit number 1 is grabbing a bottle of spray the very second you spot a single bug. We are conditioned to think that any insect equals a crisis. But Amish growers notice a tiny cluster of aphids and stay perfectly calm. They know their ladybugs are on the way. A minor bug presence is literally just bait for your good insects. If you panic and nuke those aphids, you just wiped out the food supply that sustains your predator army. You essentially fired your free security detail just because you caught them having a snack on the clock, and then you act surprised when next week's aphid outbreak is 10 times worse. It happens because you destroyed the exact mechanism designed to prevent the infestation in the first place. Habit number 2 is growing in massive, single-crop blocks. I did this forever because it felt neat and harvesting was a breeze. However, a massive, unbroken line of just cabbage is basically a glowing airport runway for cabbage moths. Mixing your plants scrambles their navigation. Habit number 3 is maintaining an overly sterile garden. Naked dirt between your beds might look sharp, but it completely removes any safe haven for spiders, ground beetles, and other soil-level hunters. Tossing down a light blanket of straw mulch or letting a tiny ribbon of clover grow gives those crucial allies a home. The 4th habit, and this is the absolute biggest one, is viewing soil health and bug control as two completely disconnected subjects. I made this mistake for decades. The Amish showed me it is the exact same issue. Depleted soil creates fragile plants. Fragile plants fail to transform their nitrogen into complete proteins, and plants packed with soluble nitrates are an open buffet for every single hornworm within a half-mile radius. Once you focus on feeding the dirt, you naturally fortify the plant's immune defenses, and the bug issue silently fixes itself from within. John Kemp validated this across millions of acres. Countless Amish generations proved it right in their backyards. The scientific debate is over. The real question is, are you ready to put down the chemical jug and start constructing a healthy ecosystem? Finally, I want to share a trick I picked up from an Amish family that I have literally never read in a gardening manual, seen on another channel, or found in a university brochure. It is one of those concepts that sounds almost ridiculously basic, right up until you implement it and realize it cures a headache you have fought for years. Whenever Amish gardeners move their delicate spring seedlings out into the dirt, they slip a protective collar fashioned from a basic cardboard tube right around the base of the stem. They just bury it about an inch down into the dirt, leaving maybe 2 inches sticking up into the air. They literally just use empty toilet paper tubes. Sometimes they will just chop an empty paper towel roll into smaller pieces. That is the entire secret. That is all there is to it. This little cardboard ring achieves 2 incredibly smart things. Number 1, it forms a literal wall to block cutworms. If you do not know, cutworms are nocturnal grubs that slither across the dirt and bite straight through the tender stems of baby plants. A lot of folks have no idea cutworms are the culprits murdering their seedlings because the crime occurs pitch black at night, leaving only a sliced, fallen plant by sunrise. These grubs kill vastly more seedlings than we tend to think, but the cardboard collar halts them instantly. The grubs cannot scale the sides, and they cannot bite through the paper. Number 2, and this is the truly elegant part, that cardboard naturally rots away into the soil over about 4 to 6 weeks. Coincidentally, that is the exact amount of time it takes for a young stem to thicken and toughen up enough that a cutworm can no longer slice into it. The armor is present precisely when the plant is weakest, and it fades away exactly when the plant can fend for itself. No plastic garbage, no chemical sprays, no money spent. Just a piece of trash cardboard, and the profound realization that real protection is not about dominating the natural world, but simply offering a living creature a tiny bit of shelter when it is most fragile. I began utilizing these little tubes 3 years back. Prior to that, I would easily lose half a dozen seedlings every single spring, and I pointed the finger at everything from unexpected frosts to weak plants to the neighborhood stray cat. Since adopting the cardboard rings, my losses are practically zero. The overall expense over 3 years has been absolutely nothing, plus maybe 5 extra minutes of effort on planting day. I actually crunched the numbers once. If I had used standard chemical cutworm granules and bought replacement plants over those 3 years, I would have burned through $50 easy. The Amish method was entirely free and wildly more effective. That is the exact type of unspoken, practical genius that will never sell a branded product, will never boost quarterly profits, and will never make the evening news, yet it rescues your harvest one tiny plant at a time. And this brings us to the core concept that weaves all these strategies together. It is a truth the Amish feel in their very bones, while the rest of modern society is slowly, stubbornly having to relearn it. There is an old German term that flows through the very fabric of Amish culture, Gelassenheit. There is no perfect English translation, but it essentially means submitting to the natural flow of things. It is about letting go of our obsessive desire to dominate every detail, and putting faith in the fact that nature already has a flawless balance built right in. A balance that was engineered eons before humanity invented chemical sprays and obsessed over corporate profit margins. This mindset is not about being passive or lazy. It is about becoming a partner. Your backyard garden is where this philosophy becomes incredibly obvious. The second you coat a plant in pesticide, even an expensive organic one, you are forcefully overriding that natural balance. Yes, you wiped out the bad bugs, but you also assassinated the lacewings, the ground beetles, and the wasps that were already on the clock, managing the threat at no cost. Then we sit around bewildered when the next wave of pests is twice as destructive. It happens because we eradicated the very soldiers fighting on our behalf. Amish communities do not wage war against nature. They simply set the table and allow nature to dine. They nourish the dirt so the vegetables can forge their own immune systems. They mix aromatic herbs so insects lose their way. They construct wild habitats to house their insect allies. They patrol the beds daily to squash problems before they explode. They deploy decoy plants to detour the bugs they cannot stop. And if they absolutely must intervene, they blend a simple kitchen remedy that repels without causing mass casualties. This is not just a single cool gardening trick. It is a profound worldview, and it has successfully fed the exact same families on the exact same dirt for over 3 centuries, all while the rest of us have been blindly purchasing plastic jugs and just crossing our fingers. So, here is your ultimate game plan moving forward. Fortify your dirt every single spring using rich compost and natural matter. Scramble your plantings to disorient the bad bugs and draw in the good ones. Leave some wild edges to house the microscopic army that works the night shift. Take a walk through your yard every morning to nip tiny issues in the bud. Plant decoys to lure the hungry bugs away from your dinner. And when things get really tough, brew up a basic garlic and pepper tea that pushes bugs away without nuking the entire ecosystem. Give that cardboard ring trick a shot with your new seedlings this season. It is totally free, takes maybe 5 minutes, and it will probably be the most rewarding garden hack you try all year. The Amish have relied on this wisdom for 300 years, and modern science is finally proving exactly why it is so effective. The only missing piece of the puzzle is you actually putting it into practice. Frankly, once you witness the outcome, once you sit back and watch a tiny ladybug plow through 50 aphids before dinner, once you look at your lush, green tomato vines in late August while the plants next door are yellow and shredded, you are going to seriously question how we ever let ourselves believe that a plastic bottle held the better answer. If any part of this shifted your perspective on how a garden should run, drop a comment below and let me know which step you plan to implement first. I literally read every single one of them. And if this kind of history and science fascinated you, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I have plenty more deep dives on the way, exploring how ancient cultures across the globe tackled everything from enriching dirt to preserving seeds. Trust me, there is a massive amount of forgotten wisdom out there just waiting to be dug up. I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. I will catch you in the next video.